Hello, I'm Steve McMullen. I live in St. John, New Brunswick, and I'm glad to welcome you to this video tour of my HO scale proto-freelance Carleton Railway. The multi-deck layout fills my entire 40-foot by 28-foot basement. The main line is about 500 feet long from West End staging at Avondale to East End staging at Haynesville, and there are also two important branch lines. The railway is set in rural Carleton County, New Brunswick, circa 1965. That's where I grew up. I remember the agricultural industry in that area of New Brunswick with lots of Alco locomotives hauling long trains of reefers filled with potatoes, especially at harvest time, stock cars loaded with cattle, and other related commodities like fertilizer and feed. Carleton County was one of the most important potato growing and production areas of North America. So potato farming had to be at the heart of my layout, and that is very evident in an operating session. I began construction of the layout in 2000 after a couple of previous layouts. We moved to St. John in 1997, we finished the basement, and I began building the railway in 2000. The layout is not quite finished, but it's well on the way. I have a North Coast Engineering DCC system that I installed in about 2006, with the railway divided into 18 power districts. A typical operating session sees 14 trains, so that's 6 way freights, 2 fast freights, and 6 passenger trains. I have about 375 freight cars, but not all are actively on the layout at once. I do have some storage places on the layout for some of those. The track is Atlas Flex Track with 210 pico turnouts. The minimum radius is 32 inches, but most areas are 36-inch radius or larger. So we'll begin the layout tour now by video, and we'll begin in Avondale. So when you begin at the west end of the layout in Avondale, you see here the locomotive facilities. There's also a small coach yard in the background there. The main line from West End staging enters from the right, and now we enter the Avondale yard, which is the most important classification yard on the railway. In a typical operating session, Avondale has a yardmaster, an assistant yardmaster, and I often work as the hostler preparing the power for each train and moving trains to and from the West End staging. Many of the daily trades are made up or terminate at this yard. You can see the fast clock in the background. There are 5 6-to-1 fast clocks that portray an 18-hour day from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. in a 3-hour operating session. In Avondale, you can also see the evidence of the agricultural nature of the local economy. The produce terminal here and the Purina feed mill are kits that I assembled when I was in junior high about 50 years ago, when I was just starting in the hobby. The McCain Foods warehouse in the background generates carloads of frozen food products. Not only potatoes, but cattle are also important to the railway. There is a large packing plant in Waterville, which we'll see in just a few moments. I've included a number of farms along the railway. The various styles of barns and outbuildings remind me of uncles and aunts I visited when I was a child and the properties that they took care of. So once we've finished this area of Avondale, we'll then skip the community of Deerville and move to Waterville. Waterville is another very rural community, but it does include the railway's busiest customer along the railway, and that customer is Buckingham Quality Meats packing plant. Again, sort of a kit-bashed building. Part of it I built when I was in high school, and the rest I've built on later. So this packing plant includes a large stockyard with spots for 17 stock cars to unload beef, cattle, and pigs. There are 2 sidings for loading reefers with meat products. And it's a busy spot because these are perishables, so the crews need to be careful to make sure that they are spotted in a timely manner on the right tracks. Another industry in the community is Waterville Enterprises. That includes a lumber yard, a hardware dealer, a large potato warehouse, as well as an Esso bulk plant. So with these industries, Waterville provides lots of local switching work. But once again, this is a rural area. There are no large urban scenes anywhere on the railway because I want to portray Carleton County, well, as I remember it. It's a rural and small town location with no really crowded areas. So as we again see the Esso bulk plant there and the station in front of it, we will see the local way freight going by. This train is the eastbound Carleton York Peddler, the daily way freight that stops in many of the towns to do switching and to make sure that perishable products are in place to be picked up by one of the two daily fast freights. Here we move into more of a residential area. You'll see that people expect to have their own gardens, their own places to grow and sell vegetables. Every house has a backyard garden, and in addition to all of those gardens by the homes, there's also a roadside vegetable market too. Most of the locomotives are Alco products, so there are RS3s, there are C424s, the yard switchers are S4s. There are a few F units on some of the passenger trains, and I also have a few Fairbanks Morse Trainmasters because they were used some in Eastern Canada as well. We're on the upper level of the layout, and the layout ranges in height from 34 inches at the east end in Millville up to 60 inches high in Avondale. So we began in Avondale. We're still in that sort of probably 55-inch range now as we go through Waterville. We're on the uppermost level here as we move into the heart of the potato growing area in the community of Rosedale. So here in Rosedale, there are 6 scratch-built potato warehouses. You can see that the barrels arrive from the fields. The trucks have brought them from the fields to be stored in the potato houses. And in the potato house, the potatoes are graded and washed and prepared for shipment. Table potatoes were placed in jute bags to be loaded on ice bunker reefers to be shipped by rail to grocery warehouses. Seed potatoes would be loaded on pallets for overseas shipment. You can see in the background that I've tried to include a number of potato fields. The potato field here behind these potato houses still needs to be planted. That's one of the things I hope to get done this spring. This is, you'll see the Fast Freight East coming along here, powered by 2 Alco C628s. And you can see another large unplanted potato field behind the next potato house here. And again, hopefully that also will soon look lush and green when I get around to it. One of the interesting aspects of potato houses here in New Brunswick was that they were often banked on the west and north sides to prevent shelter from winter winds in order to save on heating costs. So in Rosedale and in the community of Silverdale that we're just entering now, you'll see that that's what I've done with each of these scratch-built potato houses. I have sort of had them buried in the side hill, which would be very common in the real world in Carleton County in the 1960s. So here are 5 more potato houses along the right-of-way. In different architectural styles. The station's on the other side of the track. There's also an Irving oil bulk plant. Irving is a major presence and has been for a number of years in Eastern Canada. Now, potato fields in Carleton County would typically be, well, several hundred acres in size. So I was determined to include at least one large potato field on the layout, and here it is. Here in Silverdale is what I call the world's largest HO scale potato field. Now, I have no idea if it really is, but as far as I know, no one else has been crazy enough to create such a large potato field. It's about 3 feet by 5 feet. It includes 144 rows of potatoes. It took me about 10 to 15 minutes to plant each row. So that provides some insight into how crazy I really am. But I really wanted to make sure that there was at least one very large potato field on the layout, because again, that's just what Carleton County was and actually still is like. So now we've moved into the community of Wakefield. The most memorable place in Wakefield when I was a child was the drive-in theater, so I've included that. It's very prominent in the community. It looks like there's a good-sized audience based on the number of cars that are there. There's also a yard sale here. This is one of the things that visitors often remark about. There's a salvage yard next here. And finally, there's yet another potato warehouse, with this one also connected to the local farm chemical dealer. So now we've moved into what used to be the furnace room. When I first built the layout, there was very little room here for the railway, but several years ago we installed a heat pump and mini splits for heating our home. So we removed the furnace and the oil barrel, and I suddenly had more room for the railway, which I promptly filled on 3 levels. So this is the community of Lanes Creek, which has, again, lots of potato fields. It's on the middle level here between the West End staging on the top level and the community of Maplewood on the Cloverdale subdivision on the lowest level. Lanes Creek has a few industries that are served by one of the way freights. As we move out of the furnace room, the main line descends a 2.9% grade. It's the steepest grade on the Carleton Railway. Any long westbound trains typically have a helper to push them up the hill. The line just in front of the main line is the Northampton subdivision, right behind the stores there. We'll look later at the towns in that subdivision. Now, South Newbridge is a busy little town. It has the only operating traffic signal in Carleton County. This is the yard crew shunning cars on the yard lead. South Newbridge is a very important yard, especially because this is the junction with the Northampton subdivision. Also, the fast freight usually picks up and drops off cars here for other areas on the railway, and those cars will then be delivered by the way freights. So the yardmaster here is kept quite busy. You can see a sleeper waiting on the station track. The Nor'easter passenger train will pick it up in the evening for the overnight trip toward Boston. South Newbridge also has several local industries. There's a cement plant, a printing plant, a furniture factory, a couple more potato warehouses, all need to be switched each day. So you can see it's a busy place. And then here's a small community of East Newbridge coming into view. It's on a spur line. It has a feed mill, stock pens, a British American bulk fuel plant, a siding for pulpwood loading, and the railway's ballast pit. The next community is one of my favorites on the layout. Bull Lake is a very small community where there isn't even a siding. It's really a cheap vacation spot, a place to take the kids to the lake on vacation. So there's an economy motel, a lakeside campground, a diner, lots of rustic cottages along the lake. Even the local passenger train doesn't normally stop at the small station, except during the summer. It is a scenic spot that makes me feel relaxed whenever I look at it. Again, just a nice place to go and relax by the lake. I'm going to skip past the next 40 feet or so of the main line. It's on a narrow 8-inch shelf with a long passing siding in Clarkville. And then the railway enters the York County community of Nortondale. You can still see the gardens in everyone's backyards here. There are also several pig farms in this community. Nortondale also has a long passing siding, several local industries, stock pens for loading those pigs onto railroad cars to go to the packing plant. Again, you can see here the gardens in everyone's backyard and some of the farms here. And this is a very narrow shelf in this section of the layout. And here's the beginning of the long passing siding, and also there's some industrial tracks as well. So the centerpiece of the community of Nortondale, even though it has a number of industries, but the centerpiece is the Carleton Railway's own luxury resort hotel. And so that hotel is of European design, and in fact the railway constructed a station here of European design to sort of keep with the theme of their hotel. So the hotel includes 2 tennis courts, beach volleyball, a swimming pool, a large beach beside the Nakwik Stream, boat rentals, a place to dine outside. So I've tried to make this scene that's coming into view now in the video, this scene of the railway's European resort. I've tried to make it a place where the railway shows off a bit. And you can even see the luxury cars that are here. There's a bus tour that has arrived. This is a luxurious resort destination for its passenger trains. So here are the chalets where the guests can stay. Again, one of the tennis courts. There's the gift shop. And so you see here the end of the long siding in Nortondale, and the bridge is crossing the Nakwik Stream here. The small highway bridge that we're coming up to portrays a memory from my childhood, really, where Route 585 turns sharply and then crosses the stream. So, and there's actually an artist here beside the bridge who is painting the beautiful scenery. You can also see on the other side of the stream some beekeepers tending to their beehives. The problem is that just behind the tree is a black bear waiting for them to leave so that he can see if he can get some honey. And now we're entering Big Lake, which is actually a very small lake. It is the last part of the main line before the Millville Yard, and this is the newest part of the layout. This Big Lake scene was just completed in the fall. And it's another relaxing place where people enjoy boating along the lake, boating on the lake or fishing at the mouth of the stream. The main line is double track here to avoid bottlenecks for trains entering or leaving the large Millville Yard. And you can see the westbound way freight now just leaving the Millville Yard. It's powered by a pair of RS3s. And it's pulling a number of reefers, those ice bunker reefers that were used so often for hauling potatoes. But the reefers were not used for refrigeration when loaded with potatoes. Instead, they were used for ventilation on warm days when the roof hatches would be left open to keep the cars ventilated. Or they were used for insulation from the cold during the winter. And in fact, during the wintertime, a small charcoal heater would be placed underneath the car to keep the potatoes from freezing. You see a covered bridge there. Covered bridges were common in Carleton County in the 1960s. Many of them are now gone. And finally, we're going to take a quick look at the 2 communities on the Northampton branch line. So first, this is the small community of Grafton. Usually 6 or 7 cars are dropped off or picked up here daily by the Northampton local. There are just 4 industries located here, including Carnes Bakery, which is the busiest customer. And there it is. And then finally, this is the community of Northampton at the end of the line. There's a small engine terminal here, along with a few rail customers. But the main industry here is the large sawmill, which generates many carloads of finished lumber from the logs that are delivered daily by rail. So that's a very quick tour of the Carleton Railway. I hope you've enjoyed the video tour, but I hope even more that you will visit to see the railway in person or perhaps participate in an operating session. And this final photo, I should say, that is the Millville Yard. We didn't look at it as part of the video tour, but that is the end of the line on the lowest level there. So I hope that you will come and visit the railway in person at some point. And one great opportunity for that will be during Fundy Rail Fest 2023, which is happening in late May, May 25th to the 28th here in St. John. Our St. John Club has a great program planned that includes tours of 10 home layouts, operating sessions, industry tours here in St. John, which includes a tour of the recently expanded rail and container facilities at Port St. John, and much more. So I hope that you'll come to visit. Thanks for being part of this video tour of the Carleton Railway.